Well, good morning, everybody. This is the day that the Lord's made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Let's have a good day today. Let's get up and say today is going to be a good day. I believe that God knows everything that's going to happen today. So since He knows what's going to happen, I'm going to put my trust and faith in Him. So I know you want to do the same thing because there's no greater way to live than trusting God. Now we're going to look at the first two parables that Jesus gives in His ministry. The first is the parable of the garments, and the second is the parable of the wineskins. Now a parable is when God or Christ uses something earthly, something that you can connect with, a story. He uses an earthly story, but He has a heavenly or a spiritual meaning behind that story. So let's read this for just a second. The garments is in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, just as the parable of the wineskin. Mark chapter 2, verse 21. No man seweth a new piece of cloth on an old garment, else the new piece that filled it up taketh away from the old, and the rent is made worse. Now that's the parable of the garment. Then the parable of the wineskin, let's go ahead and just read that in Mark as well, chapter 2, verse 22. And no man putteth new wine into old bottles, else the new wine doeth burst the bottles, and the wine is spilled, and the bottles will be marred. But new wine must be put into new bottles. You might think, what in the world is Jesus talking about? An old cloth with a new patch, and taking wine and taking new wine, and you can't put it in old bottles, you got to put it in new bottles. Well, what Christ was talking about right here is something very spiritual and very important. And it's important that we realize this, because many people that study the Bible, they continue to try to take the Old Testament, the old garment, the old bottles, and they try to bring that into the New Testament. And Christ clearly says here, listen, you don't put the new patch on an old piece of clothing. You don't take the new wine and put it in the old bottle. What Christ is talking about is change. Change is hard for these people. Change is hard for us today. Have you ever tried to make a change in your church? A lot of people are just so fearful of change. And these people that Christ is talking to, He is telling them, listen, there is a change happening. Things are changing. We're looking at the Old Testament, the Old Covenant, the Old Promise, and now we're looking at a new covenant, a new promise. And Christ is saying you don't take the new and you don't mix it with the old. They're separate. They're separate covenants. They're separate promises. There's two different. There's the old, and now there is the new. Just like when you gave your life to Christ. You had the old person, the person you used to be, and then you came to Christ and you yielded your life to Jesus, and now there's a new person. You think differently. Your heart's different. There's a change in you. And you don't want to take the old you and bring the old in with the new. But no, you want to keep it separate. The old person should be left in the past. And now you are a new person in Christ. Just like Jesus said, listen, there's a new covenant. It's not the old. We're not going to mix it. There's a new covenant. And Christ was and Christ is that covenant. Well, God bless you. We're studying the life of Jesus. And I'll look forward to see you at the next devotion. Bye now.